Most people who feel like they have no time to learn English don't actually have a time problem. They have a structure problem, and it's costing them years of progress they could have already made. Okay, so I have to admit something. Yesterday, I sat down to study French for 30 minutes. 30 minutes. And somehow, 2 hours later, I had cleaned my entire kitchen, reorganized my sock drawer, and watched 4 videos about how octopuses camouflage themselves.
That is deeply relatable, and also deeply concerning.
It's a sickness, Emma.
It is a very common sickness, though. I think almost everyone listening right now has done the exact same thing. You sit down with good intentions, and somehow the 30 minutes disappears into nothing.
Right. So today, we're talking about something that connects directly to learning English: time management. Because I think a lot of people who are trying to learn English, or honestly trying to learn anything, don't actually have a motivation problem, they have a time problem.
That's such a good point. I hear this all the time from people learning Spanish, too. They say, I want to learn, I really do, but I just don't have time. And I used to believe that completely, but now I think the real issue is usually not time itself. It's how that time gets used or wasted.
Exactly. So today, we're going to talk through some real practical time management tips specifically for people who are learning English, but honestly, these ideas work for learning anything.
And by the end, we're going to give you a simple method, something you can actually remember and use starting today.
Let's get into it.
So I want to start with a story. There's a woman in my Spanish class named Priya. She's a nurse, she works long shifts, she has 2 kids, and honestly, her schedule is insane. When I met her, she told me she'd been trying to learn Spanish for 3 years.
3 years? That's a long time.
3 years, and she said she still felt like a total beginner. She was frustrated, she kept buying new apps, new textbooks, thinking the problem was the method. But her actual practice time, if you added it all up, was maybe 10 minutes a week.
10 minutes a week.
10 minutes a week. And it wasn't because she was lazy. She's one of the hardest working people I know. It's because she was waiting for the perfect moment. She kept telling herself, once things calm down, once I have a free Saturday, once the kids are older, then I'll really focus on Spanish.
And that perfect moment never comes.
It never comes. That's the trap. We wait for this big block of free time that basically doesn't exist in real life, especially for adults who are working or raising a family.
You know, this actually reminds me of something with my French. When I first started, I had this idea that I needed at least an hour to make it worth it. So if I only had 15 minutes free, I'd think, what's the point? I'll just do it later when I have more time. And later never came either.
That's the exact same trap Priya fell into.
Right. And what changed for her?
So one day, instead of trying to find a big block of time, I told her to just try 5 minutes. Just 5. Right after she made her morning coffee, before her shift started. 5 minutes of listening to a short Spanish conversation.
That's it?
That's it. And she said 5 minutes won't do anything. And I said, try it for 2 weeks and tell me how you feel.
And?
2 weeks later, she messaged me and said something like, I don't understand what happened, but I actually look forward to it now. The 5 minutes turned into 10 most days. And because it was tiny and attached to something she already did every single day, coffee, it just stuck.
That's such a good example because it shows the problem isn't really about having enough hours in the day. It's about the size and the structure of the habit.
Exactly. And this connects to something I've been reading about related to how our brains actually learn language.
Okay, let's talk about the research side of this, because I think this explains why Priya's 5 minutes works so well.
So first, there's a researcher named Stephen Krashen, and he's famous for something called the input hypothesis. The basic idea is that we acquire language mainly through understandable input, meaning listening or reading things that are just slightly above our current level.
Right. And what's interesting is that Krashen's idea suggests that consistent small exposure matters more than occasional huge study sessions. Your brain needs repeated, comprehensible contact with the language, not one giant dose once a month.
Exactly. 5 minutes of listening every single day gives you way more total input over a month than one 2-hour session that you do once and then feel too exhausted to repeat.
There's also Richard Schmidt, who talked about something called the noticing hypothesis. His idea is that you have to consciously notice a language feature, a word, a grammar pattern, before you can actually learn it. You can't absorb something you never paid attention to.
And short, focused sessions are actually really good for noticing. When you're doing 30 seconds of half attention while scrolling your phone, you're not noticing anything. But 5 focused minutes where you're actually paying attention, that's enough for your brain to catch new patterns.
Then there's Swain and her output hypothesis. She argued that listening alone isn't enough. You also need to produce language, speaking or writing, because that's what forces you to notice gaps in your own knowledge.
Which is why in our time management plan today, we're not just going to talk about listening, we're going to build in a small speaking piece too.
There's also Baddeley's work on working memory, specifically something called the phonological loop. This is basically the part of your brain that holds sounds and words for a short period of time so you can process them.
And the phonological loop has limited space. If you try to cram for 2 hours straight, you overload it, and a lot of what you're taking in just doesn't get properly stored. But shorter sessions, spread across the day, actually work better with how your memory naturally functions.
And finally, there's Robert Bjork, who talks about something called desirable difficulties. The idea that a little bit of struggle, like recalling something you learned yesterday instead of just rereading it, actually strengthens memory more than easy, repeated exposure.
Which is why revisiting something briefly the next day is often more powerful than studying it once for a long time.
So when you put all of this together, Krashen, Schmidt, Swain, Baddeley, and Bjork, the research is actually pointing in the same direction. Small, frequent, focused sessions with a mix of listening and speaking beat long, occasional sessions almost every time.
Which is honestly such good news because it means you don't need a free Saturday afternoon to make progress. You need 5 or 10 minutes, done consistently.
Okay, so let's turn this into something practical. We want to give you a method you can actually use today, not just theory.
Right. So we're calling this the 10-10-10 method. It's simple. 3 chunks of 10 minutes spread across your day.
Let's break it down. The first 10 minutes happens in the morning, and this is a listening block. Right when you wake up or right after your morning coffee, like Priya, you listen to something in English, a podcast, a short video, even a conversation like this one. The goal here is input. You're not trying to understand every single word. You're just letting your brain hear natural English.
The second 10 minutes happens in the middle of your day, maybe on a lunch break or a commute, and this one is a speaking block. You talk out loud, even by yourself, about something simple. What did you do this morning? What are you planning to eat for dinner? You can talk to yourself in the car or record a voice memo on your phone.
And this connects directly to what we talked about with Swain's output hypothesis. This is where you find your gaps. You'll notice moments where you don't know a word or you're not sure how to say something, and that's actually valuable information.
The third 10 minutes happens in the evening, and this is a review block. You go back to something from earlier in the day, maybe a few words you didn't know or a sentence that felt hard, and you look at it again.
And this ties back to Bjork's idea about desirable difficulties. Reviewing something after a few hours when it's slightly harder to recall actually makes the memory stronger than if you had just reread it right away.
So, to summarize, 10 minutes of listening in the morning, 10 minutes of speaking in the middle of the day, 10 minutes of review in the evening. 30 minutes total, but broken into 3 small, manageable pieces that fit into a normal, busy life.
And the key thing is you attach each block to something you already do. Morning coffee, lunch break, brushing your teeth before bed. You're not trying to create brand new time out of nowhere. You're just adding a small habit onto something that already exists in your schedule.
That's actually one more piece of research worth mentioning here. There's a concept sometimes called habit stacking, where you connect a new habit to an existing one, and it dramatically increases the chance that the new habit actually sticks.
Right, because you don't have to remember to do it. Your existing routine reminds you automatically.
So if you're someone who has tried and failed to build a consistent English practice routine, I really want you to try the 10-10-10 method for just 1 week. Not a month, not forever, 1 week. And notice how you feel at the end of it.
You know, thinking about this more, I realized this is exactly why my French practice used to fail. I was doing what I call the all-or-nothing approach. Either I had a full hour or I did nothing at all.
That's such a common trap. And honestly, it's not just with language learning. People do this with exercise, too. They think, if I can't go to the gym for a full hour, there's no point going at all. But even a 10-minute walk is better than nothing.
Right, and there's actually something freeing about lowering the bar. Once I stopped requiring myself to do a full hour and just said, okay, 5 minutes, minimum, every day, I actually ended up doing more overall because I wasn't avoiding it out of guilt or overwhelm.
That's such a good point. The guilt piece. When you skip a big planned session, you feel bad, and that bad feeling can actually make you avoid the activity even more the next day.
Exactly. It becomes this negative cycle. Whereas with small chunks, even if you miss one, it's not a big deal. You just pick it back up at the next block.
Let's talk about another piece of this too, which is choosing what to listen to and speak about. A lot of people get stuck because they don't know what content to use.
Right, and here's a tip. For the listening block, choose something slightly above your comfort level. Not something so easy you're bored, and not something so hard you're lost. This actually connects back to Krashen's idea of input that's just one step above where you currently are.
And for the speaking block, keep the topics extremely simple at first. Describe your day. Talk about the weather. Describe what's in front of you right now. You don't need complex topics, you just need consistent practice.
One thing I've found helpful is keeping a tiny notebook, or even just a note on my phone where I jot down words I didn't know during the day. Then, during my evening review block, I go back to that list.
That's such a good system, because then your review block always has fresh, personal material, instead of just randomly reviewing old flashcards that might not even be relevant anymore.
Right, it's connected to your actual life, which makes it more memorable.
There's also a researcher named Michael Lewis who developed something called the lexical approach. His idea is that language is best learned in chunks, meaning whole phrases and expressions, rather than single, isolated words.
So instead of just writing down the word busy, you might write down the whole phrase, I've been slammed at work this week. That way you're learning how the word is actually used in context.
Exactly. And that fits perfectly into the evening review block. You're not just memorizing vocabulary, you're memorizing natural chunks of English that you can use directly in conversation.
I think this whole conversation really comes down to one core idea. Consistency beats intensity. 10 minutes, 3 times a day, done every day will get you further than one long session done occasionally.
Completely agree. And I think that's honestly freeing for people who feel like they've failed at learning English before. It's not that you failed because you're not smart enough or not disciplined enough. It's that the structure you were using wasn't realistic for your actual life.
Right. The goal isn't to find more time. The goal is to build a structure that works with the time you already have.
So if you're listening to this and thinking, I don't have time to learn English, I want you to remember Priya. 3 years of frustration, and then 2 weeks of 5 minutes a day changed everything.
It's a great reminder that small, consistent action beats big, occasional effort every single time.
Okay, before we wrap up, let's review some of the vocabulary and phrases we used today, because these are useful expressions you can add to your own English.
First one, it's a sickness, which I said jokingly at the beginning. This is an informal way to describe a habit that feels hard to control, even though it's not a real illness.
Next, deeply relatable. When something is relatable, it means you personally connect with it or recognize it from your own life. Adding deeply makes it stronger.
We also use the phrase, add it all up. This means to calculate a total. For example, if you add it all up, I only practiced for 10 minutes this week.
Another good one, the perfect moment never comes. This describes waiting for ideal conditions that realistically won't happen, so you keep delaying action.
We also used attached to something or attach a habit to something. This means connecting a new action to an existing routine so it becomes easier to remember and repeat.
There's also the phrase, notice gaps in your knowledge. This means becoming aware of what you don't know yet, which is actually a helpful and healthy part of learning.
And finally, lowering the bar. This is a common expression that means reducing your expectations or requirements to make something more achievable, especially at the beginning.
Great expressions, all very natural, and all things you might hear in a normal conversation between English speakers.
So to close things out, here's your homework. Try the 10-10-10 method for 1 week. 10 minutes of listening in the morning, 10 minutes of speaking midday, 10 minutes of review in the evening.
And remember, you're not trying to be perfect. You're just trying to be consistent.
If this episode helped you, share it with someone else who's learning English, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye for now.